on today's StoryBeat.
So here I am, I'm on stage, and I've been told, don't talk to Sinatra. I'm not talking to Sinatra. Fine. And I finished my rehearsal, and everybody's buzzing around me, and they say, hurry up, he's on his way. He's on his way. It's like Conrad Birdie. I said, okay. I said, hurry up, we finished. He said, we're good. So I'm finishing the last song, and I turn my head, like stage left, and I can hardly see, the lights are in my eyes. They're running light cues on me. So I see somebody's waving and blowing kisses in the wings, but I can't see, but I see a person's doing that. So I blow back. I figure they're from in Vegas. What do I know? I walk off stage, and it's Sinatra.
Oh.
He says to me, first thing he says to me, throws his arms around me, and he says, if you need anything, you come right to me.
This is StoryBeat with Steve Cuden, a podcast for the creative mind. StoryBeat explores how masters of creativity develop and produce brilliant works that people everywhere love and admire. So join us as we discover how talented creators find success in the worlds of imagination and entertainment. Here now is your host, Steve Cuden.
Thanks for joining us on StoryBeat. We're coming to you from the Steel City, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. My guest today, the dynamic Julie Budd, is one of the most exceptional singers to ever light up a stage. Julie's dazzling vocal gifts enable her to bring something fresh to every song she sings. The New York Times declared her as the consummate performer. Julie has worked alongside some of the most illustrious stars in performance history, including legends like Frank Sinatra, Bobe Hope, George Burns, Danny Thomas, Joan Rivers, and Liberace, to name just a few. She's appeared on stages and concert halls throughout the U.S. and around the world, and has sung with some of the world's greatest symphony orchestras. She's also made numerous TV and film appearances, including co-starring in the Disney feature The Devil and Max Devlin. A child prodigy, Julie began her professional career at the age of 12 after winning a talent show while vacationing with her family. In the audience was renowned powerhouse producer and orchestrator Herb Bernstein, who took Julie under his wing. He introduced her to TV talk show host Merv Griffin at a recording session in New York City. After Merv heard Julie sing, he invited her to appear on the Merv Griffin Show, which led to over 100 more appearances on his show. Julie was soon singing for Johnny Carson on The Tonight Show, on The Carol Burnett Show, The Ed Sullivan Show, and numerous other major TV shows. Julie continues to perform her concerts and one-woman shows nationally and internationally on prestigious stages like Lincoln Center, Carnegie Hall, the Kennedy Center, the London Palladium, the Tel Aviv Performing Arts Center, and many of the finest showrooms in Las Vegas. Julie also had the extraordinary distinction of touring with the late, great Marvin Hamlisch, who personally invited her to be his guest artist for 7 years. Julie's successful recording career has incorporated a broad range of musical tastes and styles on such CDs as Remembering Mr. Sinatra, They Wrote the Songs, The New Classics, If You Could See Me Now, and Pure Imagination. Julie also teaches masterclasses to students all over the country, focusing on the art of the vocal technique. She's currently writing her memoirs about her extraordinary life's experiences, from singing as a child to working with some of show business's greatest legends. For more, please visit juliebudd.com, or you can find her on Facebook, where she responds and answers questions from friends and fans alike. For those reasons and so many more, I am deeply honored and truly delighted to welcome the brilliant Julie Budd to StoryBeat today. Julie, welcome to the show.
What an intro. I should just take you around with me wherever I go.
I could be your perpetual PR guy.
You could. People say, hi, how are you? And I say, I don't know, ask him.
Ask him. He knows more than I do.
How you doing, Steve?
I'm doing great. Thank you for asking. So let's go all the way back to the beginning, back to your roots. You've been performing since what age? When did you start? What, did you come out of the womb singing, or how did it work?
Well, I came out performing.
Performing.
You know, there are just some kids that are like that. And, you
Indeed.
know, you could spot them. I bet you do, often, right?
Sure.
And and there's a presence about them. And you know they're going to be in this business. You don't know how successful they're going to be. You don't know what capacity they're going to be in, but you do know these kids were born to be in this business.
Absolutely.
And I was one of those kids.
So you knew what, at the age of 2, 3, this was your destiny?
I used to sing commercials for my grandmother.
Wow.
Remember the old chock full of nuts commercial?
Oh, I do.
Chock full of nuts remember that one?
Yes.
Heavenly coffee. Okay. I used to sing that for my grandmother.
Did you belt it out?
Oh, honey, full voice.
Full voice.
And my grandmother would say, I this voice you could just the angels sing. And my father'd say, she'll go to med school.
Well, he was kind of off, wasn't he? He missed the mark. And so at what point did you know that early that you were that good?
I knew I was a musician, and I knew you're going to laugh at this. I thought when I was a little kid, now it may not have been true, it could have been true, but I thought I was better than the girl on the commercial. So, hey, why not?
You probably were better than the girl in the commercial.
Well, I thought I was anyway.
And so when did someone say to you, was it your grandmother, or who finally said to you, you know what, you should be singing in front of people? Or did you say it?
I said it.
You said it.
I said it. I used to, you're not going to believe what I used to do at the age of 5 or 6. I lived in Brooklyn, and it was all houses, and you went from stoop to stoop, and you had your neighbors. And I'm still friendly with all those kids. I grew up with those kids. I'm still friendly with them. And I used to get all dressed up in my holiday clothes, and I'd go from door to door and ring a doorbell, and I would tell them that I'll sing for them, but they had to pay.
You were making a living as a kid, weren't you?
And I came home. You remember the little girls who used to wear crinolines?
Yes.
And I came home with my crinoline filled with nickels and dimes and pennies. And my mother said, where did you get all that money? I came home with all of this money in my crinoline. And I said, well, Ma, I went and my mother said, you bring that money back. And I said, I will not. I earned that money. That's my money. I sang, I earned it. The next day I went back and I charged $0.25. And they paid it. And they paid it.
You weren't just talented at a young age. You were also a business person.
I always knew how to stay in show business.
That's amazing.
Even when I met Herbie, years later when I was 12 years old, I knew how to get into show business.
So you didn't really need anyone to tell you how to get to the next place. You were just doing it.
Well, Herbie got me to the really big next place.
Sure, of course.
I knew how to get to Herbie.
Well, that was a big deal.
And that's the way. But that's what I meant about those kids. You always knew who they.
Did you know that this competition that you sang, where he heard you, did you know he'd be there? Was that calculated?
I got him there.
You got him there.
I got him there.
Wow.
I got him there.
And you were 12.
And I was 12.
Wow.
I know.
I'm not sure at 12 whether I knew how to put my pants on properly.
Do you know who used to say stuff like that to me? It was Mike Douglas.
Mike Douglas.
Remember Mike Douglas?
Oh, of course.
He was the nicest man in show business. The nicest man. And I used to do his show, and I used to co-host when I was 14 years old.
That's incredible.
And he looked at me, and I just felt I was born to do this.
You must have been at that age an old soul at that point. You were channeling some kind of energy from somewhere else.
I didn't know that. I just had the desire. Do you know, I wasn't that focused that way. And also I wasn't a showbiz bratty kid. I was really very, very serious about the music. And it was so important to me, as it is today. It was so important to me to be excellent.
Well, you don't get to be excellent if you don't desire to be excellent, I don't think.
I think you are so right.
And I think that there are lots of people with talent that never exploit it properly, that never develop it.
We know that's so. Yeah. We know that's so, but the thing is, I would be up all night agonizing over a passage, you know, and I was 12, 13, 14. It was so important to me to be excellent. I didn't want to be good. I wanted to be world class,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and good wasn't enough.
Well, there's
You
no
know,
doubt that that showed up, didn't it? Because you wound up not long after that working with these massively well-known people. And you can't
they
point to tons of 12 and 13 and 14-year-olds singing with those kinds of people.
And I'll tell you something interesting, which you're really going to kind of know what I mean when I say it. They were not dealing with me as if I were a little girl, because the stakes were very high. I mean, I was on tour in these massive auditoriums being reviewed. They were giving me a big break. They put their reputations on the line to give me a chance. And I had to show up. I had to really show up with very little training. So, you know, I was expected, maybe that's the word I'm looking for. I was expected to hold my own with these pros.
Who told you to be what being a pro meant? Did anybody tell you that, or did you just figure it out on your own?
I was experiencing it. There's nothing more than experiencing something.
Mm-hmm.
You have to experience it. And I was experiencing what it is to have this responsibility.
So nobody took you aside and said, you know, when you go here, this is how you act. When you go there, this is how you treat this person. You just were learning it as you went.
No, I knew it.
You knew it.
I knew how lucky I was.
So you really were born to do this. I mean, you just had it.
I understood that 12-year-old kids didn't get contracts at MGM Records.
No.
You know, I knew that. I was understanding of that. And don't forget, you know, I had Herbie there grooming my career in every aspect.
Sure.
I had parents that would not tolerate a showbiz brat. Do you know what I'm saying?
I do.
Real standards to live up to. Real standards.
Were your parents hovering? Were they helicopter type parents? No.
My parents told me two things. Are you a parent?
I am not, unfortunately.
Okay. Well, I don't have children either, but I have lots of nieces and nephews, and I come from a very tight family.
Right.
Okay. For Jewish, we're very Italian. We're a very tight family.
There's an equation between Jewish people and the Italian people. Effusive. They love food. We talk with our hands.
All my friends were Jewish and Italian.
Exactly.
So, you know, the family was very, very tight and still is. And my parents told me two things. The first thing was, if you become a brat, if you become a real brat, and if you ever show up and you think you're all that and you don't know your work and you waste anybody's time and you embarrass her, because that would be embarrassing. He's a professional. He's putting his name on the line for you. If you do that, you only get one strike. You don't get two, you don't get three, you're out.
Wow.
You got to know that that is not acceptable.
And how did you take that? Did that scare you, or did it?
No, it was like, I answered them like, of course. It was like that. It was like, why are you even telling me this? Of course. But they felt they had to say it. And then the second thing was, which was a complete turnaround, if it all becomes too much for you, you have a home, you come home. You have a home, you have a family, you have a place to come to. If the day comes along that this all becomes too much, you just come home and we're here.
So you had a deep support system that you could fall back toward.
But I was also in a disciplined support system.
When you went out into the world, were your parents, did they stay back in New York, or did
My
they?
My father was a very successful businessman. He couldn't go on the road with me.
Right.
And my mother had two other children at home.
So you were under her Bernstein.
I went out with her. And my oldest sister, Jill, came out a lot with me. Often. Jill is almost 4 years older than me. So Jill came out with me a lot. And then my father would meet me on the road during the weekends. But my mother didn't join me a lot.
You had a real first class, jump in the fire with both feet education, just being out there like that.
I always think of it as people who throw kids in a swimming pool and say, swim.
Swim, yeah.
Swim.
Or the non-Jews would say as a baptism by fire. You were out there really, just doing it. You were you didn't need to go to school for anything.
Somehow, I don't know. Somehow, I knew. I somehow, in the deepest part of me, always just knew. And then I had Herbie there navigating it for me, rehearsing, teaching me, working on songs, working on phrasing, working on orchestrations. I just knew, and I can't explain how I did.
So you had no formal academic training as a singer. You didn't go to.
Not at that time. No.
Did you eventually get trained as a?
Oh, of course. I was a very serious student. Oh, yes.
Mm-hmm.
I studied with, for people in New York who knew, I studied with Lydia Summers and Willard Young for years and years and years and years and years and years. And I agonized over everything because that's just me.
And I assume
it was never good enough. You know what I mean?
Well, I think that's the mark of a great professional, is that you never are satisfied with the way you are. You're always looking to push the envelope in some way.
I think that if you really need that in your life, you're never going to be calm. So, don't go into this business if you think you're just going to be happy to do the shows. Oh, we got a show. Aren't we happy? I'm never happy. Don't give me happy. Happy I don't care about.
You're always looking for that next thing to make yourself grow.
Yes, that's my whole thing. See, my whole thing is, listen, I'm making fun of it now, but truthfully, I don't know too many people who aspire for, real greatness who are comfortable a lot of the time.
I don't either.
I don't know who those people are. And if they're around, maybe they should be shot.
I know tons of really successful writers, and they're all insecure.
Yeah, everybody is. It's like, we have a love-hate thing, I think, with this industry, all of us. Do you know what I'm saying?
Oh, on the one side of it, it can be incredibly wonderful and rewarding, and the other can kick your butt every which way.
It does all the time. And the hardest critic, of course, is you.
Sure, of course.
But that's okay.
But you're also, I'm going to assume, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong, that you're able to look back and see how wonderful things have been.
Things have been incredible. Things continue to be incredible.
Mm-hmm.
I am the luckiest girl singer in the business. Okay. I really have been, and I am. And so much has been blessed in my life. I mean, just starting from my family, just that alone. I mean, I see horror stories in this.
Sure.
In this industry, and it really scars people. And I don't know how I just don't know how people live past the stories they have to tell half the time.
Yeah, and you see some young stars, especially, who are destroyed by the time they get to be 19 or 20 years old. They're already done. You survived through that.
And it's a very awkward age artistically too.
Sure.
When you go from childhood to teenhood to womanhood, I call it maturehood. You know what I'm saying? Because we do, and how to navigate all of those places, all of those,
I would think, especially as a woman in particular, because there's all the world is fraught with all sorts of things for a single woman out in the world on her own, and especially back in those days, where we're talking about the 60s and 70s. Yes.
Even today, people like to think things changed so much. We talk about it more, we fight it more, we're more vocal, But you know what? The industry is still the industry.
Oh, no question.
And you still have to worry about how you look, and you still have to worry about your image, and you still have to worry about, getting older, and you still have to worry about how you present yourself and the physical aspect of it all. And it's not enough that you're singing great, but the whole package has to be right. It's like endless. It's endless.
So one can tell, all one has to do is listen to any song that you sing, and it's instantly available to you as a listener that you are infusing every song with some kind of passion. It's all coming from somewhere from passion. I assume you can't sing without doing that. Yes?
Well, the first thing that's important, I think, no, it's just my feeling, is I think you need to sing songs that you have a need to do.
Mm.
You have to really want to do that material.
And how do you find those? How do you make those decisions?
It's organic. A lot of it is organic. Herbie is a great source for me still. I still work with Herbie. I'm with Herbie, 53 and a half years.
Is that all?
That's all. Can you believe it?
That's amazing.
I told her.
He's still producing you, yes?
Yeah, I said to Herbie, Herbie, we got to get it right, because we don't know how to do this with anybody else. But we have worked with other people, and I've worked with Tony Hatch, and I've worked with Peter Matz, and I've worked with Sebesky and Peter Moore. I mean, I worked with a lot of people.
Sure.
But Herbie's been like the ground zero music wise.
He's the bedrock. He's where you can look back toward and know that that's where you had a source of inspiration and training from an early point on.
But Herbie had always introduced so much material to me. And, sometimes I wanted to do it, and sometimes I didn't want to do it, blah, blah, blah. And then I discover it, and then I like it more. So Herbie taught me a lot about that when I was young, that you don't always connect to material right away and say, oh, I love it, I love it, I love it, I got to do it. Sometimes, you have to discover things.
Well, I guess the question would be is how often does that happen? Is it you have an instant connection to some songs, I assume, and that other songs have to grow on you a little bit?
Yeah. But a lot has to do with the fact that, then we start constructing it, and Herbie starts orchestrating it, and we find our way to do it. And then all of a sudden, oh, don't do it this way. Put it in a medley of those things. And then, and then when you come back to it, it's kind of interesting, isn't it? And, and all of a sudden I go, I didn't know I was going to like this so much, but this is like really, now we made a play out of this. I think I like this, so it's all of those things that you do.
Are you always looking for songs that have a story in them?
Yes.
Something you can
In fact,
tell.
I very rarely do something that doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it has to have a story. I very rarely do something that doesn't.
What does that do for you as a singer to have that story in there?
It makes it about something.
Mm-hmm.
You see, I think a lot of the reason why I don't like a lot of things that I see often on film is because they're not about anything. The film isn't about anything. It's a car chase. If I see another shoot 'em up, do this, do that, I can't. You know what I'm saying? I need something that's about something.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like that in my music too.
Mm-hmm.
It has to be about something. And then I'm happy to explore it.
So of today's music, the contemporary music, the most contemporary, are you finding it more challenging to find material? Because I would submit that there's a lot less of that today.
There's a lot. Here's the difference. There's a lot less records that are being done that way. But believe me when I tell you, there are a lot of good story songs out there.
Well, you're also in New York, and there's lots of folks there creating story songs, especially for the theater and people around the theater.
But even the young kids, they are writing story songs. They get buried in their album. Maybe it's not. I'll tell you something. I was listening to Michael Jackson's Dangerous CD last night.
Right.
And there were story songs on there.
Well, sure.
And a lot of it was buried in production, and a lot of it was buried in funk and feel. And that's all great because I love that stuff. But Michael's secret was Michael knew how to read a lyric, even in that genre.
For sure.
Michael was a really great artist. And so I was able to find, believe it or not, some really great story songs. One of them was Gone Too Soon, written by Larry Grossman. And that was on that CD. And I put it on mine as well. And so they're there. They're there. The story songs are there.
Well,
you just, you have to go fishing.
Well, Larry Grossman's from the theater.
Yeah, but Michael was hip enough to find that.
Well, yes, of course. Well, that was what my question to you was, is how do you, so he was very good at finding material, clearly. How do you look for material? What you just listening to everything all the time?
I listen to everything all the time. Everything, even my clock.
It's a beautiful sounding clock.
You hear my clock? It's almost funny. It's I hear it, but I don't hear it all the time. Well, I'm just so used to it.
Of course.
But anyway, I'm always listening. I just listened, which I loved. Shirley Bassey's new CD. Did you hear Shirley Bassey's new CD?
I have not heard her new CD.
You got to go get it. You have to go get it.
She's one of my all-time favorite singers. I mean, she's amazing.
I'll tell you what I loved about it. It wasn't all about the money notes, although they were there.
Mm-hmm.
There was this whole other texture about this CD, and it was done script-like. It started out with this story, and then it goes to the next thing and the next thing, and it takes you on the journeys of all the things that happen to us as women and as performers. And then she tells this love story, and the love of her life turns out to be the music.
Oh, yeah.
And that's how she ends the CD.
So they programmed the CD in a story-like order.
For me, it felt that way.
Right.
So I loved it because you know me, I like when something's about something.
Do you try to program your CDs that way, where there's a flow and a story to it?
Well, there certainly have been themes to the CD. Like they wrote the songs are about the new writers that I like. And the new classics was another way to look at the American songbook.
Mm-hmm.
And the Sinatra CD is about the work that I did and heard on stage with Mr. Sinatra.
Well, sure.
So they're thematic in that story way.
So, all right. So let's talk a little bit about performing, the art and craft of performing, which is a whole thing unto itself beyond just knowing the songs or rehearsing to the point where you're good at it. I assume if it wasn't for COVID, you'd be out performing right now. Yes.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, because we're having this conversation. This show will be around for a long time, but we're having the conversation in the time of COVID, so people are not out in theaters at all right now.
Well, I finished right before COVID. I was lucky because I finished Vegas, I finished the New Jersey stuff, I finished New York, I finished my Florida stuff, and I came home, and then COVID hit, and then I was supposed to go back to Birdland for 4 or 5 nights. I didn't do that. And then I had about 5 shows for the holiday and New Year's, and I didn't do those.
Sure.
So, and then there was going to be stuff afterwards, but it's like coulda, shoulda, woulda, I wonder how things are going to be when we all come back.
What are you doing now to keep your voice good to go, so to speak? How are you working it?
I just do my vocalises as I always do.
As if you're about to go on the road.
Yeah. I haven't been working as much as I do when I go on the road. You have no idea how rigorously I work when I'm going on the road.
It's that's what I want to know is how rigorous is it? What do you go through?
It's very rigorous. It's very, and I just. It's a lot. It's a lot. And I was kind of glad to get off my throat for a while, to be honest with you. I felt I needed it. I felt it was good that I wasn't singing this year. Actually.
Can you feel the difference now, having not?
I feel I'm more relaxed in my vocal cords, and I feel as I'm working, it's a little less strained and a little warmer. And I think I just needed to get off my voice. I was working a lot, and I think every now and then it's good to just get off your throat.
Just give it a break.
Yeah, I think it's important, but it's important not to, just let it lay there on the shelf. It's a muscle, it's got to be stretched. I'm not singing as much as I sang when I was actually working, but I'm singing enough to keep it stretched out so that when I got to go back to that rigorous thing, I'm ready to do that.
Well, it is, as
I
you
don't
say,
want
it
to
is.
live in that rigorous state while I'm not working.
Right.
I want to do that to my throat.
As you say, it is a muscle, and you have to keep exercising the muscle, or it will go
Absolutely.
atrophy.
Well, I don't think I would atrophy because I'm singing so long, and I'm not off it that long where it's going to be atrophied. But certainly, it's going to take work to stretch it out again and get it back to that place where it can take that beating. Our throats take a beating.
Sure, they do. Are you already thinking about how you're going to have to ramp up certain parts of this when the world comes back and you're able to start touring again?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about that for a while. I've been thinking about it for a while, and I'm just not getting crazy about it. I just stay in it. I stay in it, and I keep it stretched out, and I stay in it. I know a lot of performers are out there doing stuff online, and they have some need to, somehow stay in the work process, but I don't have that need. I'm not working under the conditions that I work with online when I'm, doing my shows and stuff. So I don't want to produce something that isn't going to be of great quality.
Special.
So yeah. So I'm kind of leaving that part of me alone. I do shows like yours. I love doing these shows, and especially I like your show because it's intelligent, and it here I go again, it's about something.
Well,
but
now I'm blushing. So
but as far as my throat is concerned, I'm going to, now I got vaccinated. I didn't want to be around anybody. That was another thing for
sure,
me.
of course not.
I spent a year alone, and
I understand.
It wasn't so horrible for me. I'm used to being alone. It's funny. It wasn't as horrible as I thought it was going to be. What was horrible for me was to hear about the deaths. What was horrible for me was to hear and see the sadness that the world was living through. But as far as my own experience, I was very, very solo through this whole thing. And I was afraid to be around people a lot.
You and me both.
Yeah. And for good reasons. Listen, we're not crazy. And now I got the first vaccination. I'm getting the second one in about 2.5 weeks. And Herbie was already vaccinated months ago. He got his second round. So I'm not going to be afraid then to be around Herbie to start rehearsing. Yeah. And to see and to get us cohesive again.
Well, I think once you've had your second shot, and a couple of weeks has gone by after that, I think that you're good to be around people. Even without masks on, you're good to be around them in together, not just out with anyone, but
well, I'm not going to be in crowds. I mean, right. We don't know enough, and I'm not going to, and that's why I don't want to work right away.
All right. So I wanted to explore for a moment the differences for you between performing on stage and in the studio. What are the big differences for you? Do you treat the way you're singing differently, or is it virtually the same thing?
Oh, it's completely different in terms of its projection, but somehow it's just me. I just always knew how to trim that. It just felt natural to know how to trim that.
When you say trim that, you mean pull it back in volume?
Not just in volume, but your whole, when you're in a big house of 2,000 or 3,000 seats, or even 1,500 seats or 500 seats, whatever. These are big houses. You automatically, your body opens up. Your projection is wider somehow.
Fuller.
And when fuller, wider, broader. That's the word, broader. And when I'm in a studio, in a small room, and the mic is here, it's not.
It's intimate.
It's intimate, and so I pull out my broadness from maybe a little bit more personal space.
For you, it is a two totally different things: recording and performing live.
Yes.
And And do you have to then prepare yourself differently? Do you have to think differently? Do you have to work your body differently?
You do work your body differently. You use more of your physicality on stage
Mm-hmm.
than you do in the recording studio. And the recording studio is a very personal place. And it's a less stressful place because you could get it the way you need it to be. When you're on stage, you got one take.
Do you prepare so when you're going into the studio versus getting ready to do a live performance, do you prepare differently? Do you vocalize differently?
No.
That's the same.
Technique is technique. And may I say, honesty to the work is the same whether you're broader or more intimate, but you find different ways to express that. Does that make sense to you?
It does. What's your favorite thing about performing live? What turns you on about performing live?
When it's working and you're really in it, there's this transference between you and the audience. And it's a funny place because part of you is still very private to do this work. And yet you're sharing it publicly with all these people in real time. And then you're sharing it with the orchestra. And somehow I'm communicating with Herbie in that silent way up there that we know how to communicate. There's a million things going on. It's a head spin. There's a million things going on stage, and then there's the costume changes, and then there's the other physical things that you do on stage, and then there's the usage of the props and the video, and there's a lot of things going on when you're on stage. And then when you're in the studio, everything's just pared down and it's smaller.
Are you thinking about an audience then, or are you just thinking about Herbie at that point?
In the studio?
In the studio, right.
Well, in the studio, I have the orchestra and Herbie, but it feels, oh God, what's the word for it? Less pressure.
Less pressure.
Less pressure.
Do you think of as he's your audience? He's the person you're trying to play to?
No. And even when I'm working with the audience, unless there's a reason for me to bring them into the songs, I'm not playing to them. They're observing what I bring.
Do you ever find yourself on stage and that you get lost in it? Not that you are lost and don't know where you are, but that you find yourself lost within it and that sort of takes over the performance. Does that ever happen for you?
That happens all the time when it's working right.
Mm-hmm.
When it's working right.
Do you think of that as being in the zone?
Well, that's what I was trying to express before. That sometimes, you start working and you're in this space and you can't define that space. It's almost spiritual.
Does the end of the song and the audience's reaction to it then interrupt that, or does it add to it?
It does all of it.
It does all of it.
It does all of it.
Because the end of the song is the end of the song, and you still have to go on to the next thing. Correct.
So it's all of that. It's all of it. It's invigorating and jarring, and it's I call it the third element. It's all there.
Sure. Well, yeah. The audience is part of the evening's performance, aren't they?
Yes. Well, that's what I meant before when I said, and you have this transference.
Sure. Absolutely. It's an interesting thing. I've talked to any number of folks about when you're in a show, or in your case, you're doing your one-woman show. Night after night, after performance, that there are differences, and tonight was better than last night. You
think that. No, I gotta speak to that.
Sure.
Okay?
Please.
We are sometimes the last ones to really know how good or bad it was.
Sure, of course.
You know what I mean? For like a bazillion reasons, by the way.
Right.
And there have been nights that I thought were not as good as the night before. And I've actually seen footage of those shows. And I've actually heard recordings of those shows. And I've actually seen how people feel about those shows. And I'm never right about that.
well, see, so that's part,
what I mean?
That's partly my point, that the audience, unless I'm going to jump to a conclusion that you have a few groupies that have seen you more than a few times.
Yeah. Right.
But other than those folks who are able to compare performance after performance, I would guess that the vast majority of your audience has seen you once, maybe twice total, but usually once. So that night is special for them, and they're getting that totality of performance from you that night. But you are comparing it in your mind's eye to all these other performances.
And that's the worst thing you could do, because then you're not in the moment.
Right.
You see
You're
what I'm
not in the
saying?
moment.
And I'll tell you something about audiences that's really interesting. People think that the greatest show they did was with the audience that was gregarious and yelling bravo and 12 standing ovations and blah, 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 blah. And then they go and the next night they do the same show. And the audience loves it, but it doesn't have the physical energy that was in the house.
All right. Exactly.
But that doesn't mean that it wasn't great. And that doesn't mean that you didn't bring something else different to it. And that another thing that's really important to understand is that doesn't mean that audience didn't adore the show. They have a different energy.
It's a different chemistry. There's a chemical reaction that happens.
And they're different. They might be older and more reserved. They may be listeners. There are people that are not as, how can I express it?
Do you find that, I believe it's there, but do you find that certain audiences, there might be 1, 2, 3, 10 people who are more effusive than others, and they build the audience reaction by their effusiveness? That they
Well, you know, the great managers, the Colonel Parkers and all those guys that were handling people like Elvis, they used to plant people.
Well, sure.
You know, and they knew that that was true.
Well, that was the famous story about Frank Sinatra, is that he had plants.
If that's the oldest trick in show business, that you know, managers, you know, will pad the house. They'll know somebody's coming in on an important night, and they'll put them in the house because they know it revs up the audience.
So I know that you have a great story that you tell about Frank Sinatra, and that he took you a little bit under his wing and he wanted you to learn from his performance. Tell the story about what he did for you in Las Vegas.
Well, you know, first of all, I have to preface it by saying that when I got this job with Frank Sinatra, I wasn't yet 16. I was 15 and a half years old. And when I met Frank, I wasn't quite 16. We worked together in April. My birthday is in May. So I was going on 16, and everybody warned me. I call them the yes men. All the yes men, they were all warning me. The PR persons, the managers, the agents, the hotel people, the blah blahs, you know, I call them the blah blahs. And they're all telling me, the blah blahs. And they're all telling me that I should not talk to Mr. Sinatra.
Ooh.
That if I have anything, I should come to them. They'll deal with it. Any of my needs, whatever, my questions about the show, blah, blah, blah. I go to them. So, okay. Now, you don't look at Sinatra, you don't breathe near Sinatra, you don't talk near. I said, I get it. I get it. I get it. You know, I was one of these kids, you didn't have to say it a million times. It's like with my parents. I got it. Right?
Yeah.
And I get to Vegas. I go out on stage. Now, you have to understand a lot of the orchestrations. There's 45 musicians on the stage.
Right.
I'm hearing these orchestrations for the first time. Me and Herbie had been rehearsing them at the piano for a month. Okay. I didn't hear them full orchestra. These are new charts. Now it's opening day. 45 guys are there. I'm 15 and a half, 16 years old. I'm going out. And I never heard the complete charts before.
Wow.
I'm in rehearsal.
Wow.
But that's okay, because Herbie and I rehearse so well. I'll never forget what Fred Astaire said about rehearsals. He said, rehearse to the point of nauseam, so that it is so part of you that there is nothing that can happen that's going to pull you out. Mm-hmm. That it is so second nature for you to do this. By the time opening night comes, it's not going to matter. And that's the way Herbie and I were. Mm-hmm. We were like so on our gig that it didn't matter. So I got out on stage and it sounded as if I knew these charts forever, because I had rehearsed. Herbie would say, that's where the flute comes in. That's where the string line's coming in. You know, we knew. We worked. So here I am. I'm on stage. And I've been told, don't talk to Sinatra. I'm not talking to Sinatra. Fine. And I finished my rehearsal and everybody's buzzing around me and they say, hurry up. He's on his way. He's on his way. It's like Conrad Birdie. I said, okay. I said, hurry up, we finished. He says, we're good. So I'm finishing the last song and I turn my head like stage left and I can hardly see, the lights are in my eyes. They're running light cues on me. So I see somebody's waving and blowing kisses in the wings, but I can't see, but I see a person's doing that. So I blow back. I figure they're friendly in Vegas. What do I know? I walk off stage and it's Sinatra.
Oh.
He says to me, first thing he says to me, throws his arms around me and he says, if you need anything, you come right to me. All right, go listen to the Yes Man. So now I'm doing this run of shows with Sinatra. And what he used to do is he'd put up a cocktail table in the wings. Pat Henry went on first. I went on second. He was very generous to me. He let me do like 35, 40 minutes, which I thought was, I know, that's huge, right?
That's huge.
I thought I was doing 15, 20 minutes and going home and having a bagel. What did I know? 15, 20 minutes. I figured I'm finished, right? No, he said, go out there, Julie, and do your show. Do that show. Fine. So I go. And afterwards, I quickly put on my robe and take the glad rags off and put on my robe. And he had a table and a cocktail table in the wings and a chair. He had his props on the table. I was his prop girl. I used to hand him his props every night. And then he'd say to me, you know, Julie, I have a setup in my room. My dressing room is right next door to his. He says, there's all kinds of food there. Take some food after the show. And so I'd take some food and I'd sit there and have my pepper steak and watch Frank Sinatra work every single night from the wings. And on his bows, he'd come off and I'd hand him his water and his napkin towel. And he would talk to me in the middle of bows and stuff. And I'd say, hurry up, you got to go out there. He's having a whole conversation with me. I said, you got to go out there. They're going to tear the place apart. Get out there. He used to laugh at me, you know.
I think he knew they'd wait.
Exactly. But we were having so much fun. And I'd sit there every single night. But you see, he was a wise person because he knew. Somehow he understood me. He knew I was watching and I was learning.
Mm-hmm.
It's like what I told you about those kids. You always know who they are.
Right.
He knew I was one of those kids.
Right.
And then he told me he was one of those kids. He told me his mother got him his first really big band, really first production job when he was 15.
Wow.
Around my age, when he got his first big band job.
What would you say is the greatest thing you learned from him about in terms of performance, in terms of the way you handle an audience and so on? What did you learn from him?
Take your time.
Take your time.
Take your time.
Don't rush.
A pro takes their time. Take your time. Let the moments happen. Take your time. Trust. Take your time.
And thus is the essence of cool.
So they say.
Yeah.
But you see, what was cool about him was truly he didn't know he was being cool. I mean, he played on it later, you know, when he figured it out. You know, he was having fun with it. He was a very honest performer.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I noticed that in his film work. If you look at his film work, you will see. I even watched it on an episodic TV show that he did. He was on Hawaii with Selleck.
Oh, Magnum PI.
I was on the internet and I saw it and I thought, well, this will be interesting to watch Mr. S on Magnum. And it was so interesting to watch him against the other actors. His level of authentic self. And they were all pros. You know, they were all pros. Every one of the actors on those shows were great studio players and great pros and had fantastic experience. And then you saw Mr. Sinatra, and there was an authenticity about him and his work. Mm-hmm. And I used to watch that, how he allowed himself to be as true in the moment as it could be. He took his time to make that happen on stage.
Well, he is certainly, from my perspective, and I'm hardly alone in this thought, he's maybe the single greatest interpreter of lyrics who's ever sung. He interprets lyrics in a certain way that is just, uniquely him. Did you, when you were watching him performance after performance, was he giving you the same song over and over again, or was he always doing something a little different in performance?
Well, just the nature of being live, you're different every night.
Every night.
Every night you are. I mean, you are, and isn't that wonderful? Isn't that, then you're in the moment.
Well, otherwise, I guess you could just put a movie up and it would be the same thing over and over again.
I mean, certain things you have to mark when you
Right,
work.
sure, of course.
But even in that, inflection and moments that are more that night, or that you even discover. Isn't it great when you're doing something night after night after night and you keep discovering new things?
Well,
So,
to me, that would be
Isn't that
the
what it's
joy,
supposed to be?
of it. Yes, the joy
Not
is,
what it's supposed to be,
yeah, sure. Because if you weren't, I think it would get very dull very fast.
Well, also the audience would never be moved by you. They don't know technically why that's happening, but they know you are not engaged.
Oh, no question.
You're missing an action. You're missing
smell
action.
it. They smell it. They can see it.
Absolutely. And that's what I love about working with an audience. It keeps you very true.
Have you ever
Audiences will keep you true.
have you ever found yourself slipping into that and you've had to work through it?
Fatigue is your biggest enemy with that kind of thing. When you've been on the road too long and it's time to get home. And fatigue can make that happen.
And what do you do? How do you handle that?
Take your time.
Take your time.
Take your time. It will come. Take your time. Trust it.
And yeah, that's very interesting to me, because I would think one of the bigger challenges of a career like yours is maintaining everything, your vocalization, your energy level, and all that over a very long haul. It's a marathon.
It is. It is a marathon. And I always say to students that come in, now and then I'll take on a student here and there,
Mm-hmm.
and I say to them, be very careful, because if you make it and you get an opportunity, you don't want to be out of the tour more than you're in the tour. And that's going to happen if you don't pace yourself vocally, and if you don't know what you're doing up there. And even the finest singer can hurt their throat.
Sure.
You catch a cold, fatigue, a million things can, it's a delicate thing, the voice,
Well, look at what happened with Adele. I mean, she's gone through all that.
happens with every singer.
Yeah.
It's like,
It's amazing. I'm going to ask you a question I ask lots of people, and I get very interesting answers back. For you, when you're looking at a song to sing, what for you makes a good song good? What is the element? Is it just the story, or is there something else to it?
it's usually driven by story for me.
Mm-hmm.
But now and then it will be coupled with something so, like the song The Way You Look Tonight, or Some Enchanted Evening. They're written so well that the lyric and the progression in which they wrote it musically is so divinely coupled. It's almost like it's this perfect storm of heaven, put before you for 3 minutes. And how can you must do that piece. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
When you hear something like that and it happens and you discover it and it works on your instrument so beautifully, you have to do it.
Right.
It's not even a question.
It's what makes the difference between a good or a great song and something that's a little more pedestrian.
And also when you must do it.
Have you ever?
Am I making any sense to you when I say that?
A little bit. I want to go a little deeper on this.
Okay.
Do you ever find yourself, you've set out on a song and you realize it's maybe not at that quality? Is there anything that you can do to it? No.
And you know right away if it's quality or not.
And so then it gets cut out.
You can't. You must. There are pieces that I just had to do. What can I say? I had to do them. They were there, and it was this thing I had to. There has to be a great longing to do the work, or pick something else.
Is there one? Is there one or more songs?
There are things that are more than others, of course.
Of course. Well, sure. I mean, you've sung. How many songs have you sung in your life? You've probably sung thousands of them.
Yeah, but I won't do things I don't have a real longing to do. And there are some things that are just such a great longing, I have to do them. And
Right.
it's not even a question.
Right. Is there one or more songs that are your absolute favorites? You could sing them forever?
Yes.
Yes. care to reveal any of those or not?
There are Gershwin pieces that are just so compelling. The score of Porgy and Bess. I do them occasionally in my show. Jerome Kern pieces. And Eric Clapton.
Which one?
Tears in Heaven.
Tears in Hell. Oh my goodness.
I mean,
Great.
I heard that and I said, you know what? As I'm telling you, I got a chill. See, I always know when I'm telling the truth because I get that chill.
You get the goosebumps.
I get a chill. Yeah.
Well, that song came from such a deep place of pain for him. Yeah.
There's another piece I'm going to put in my show, Dance with My Father Again. I have to do it. It's just, you see, I get up in the morning and I say, I just have to. What can I tell you?
So you let your psyche percolate on things and things then bubble up to you. Yeah. And you work, I'm gathering you work a lot by your gut instinct.
I always have. It's my truth thing. But I also see, I have Herbie. I would be scared of everything in this business if he couldn't be my sounding board.
Well, the good news is you back it up with this just gigantic talent. So, with
his talent.
Well, with your talent, because if you woke up in the morning and you were just, plain Jane out in the sticks and had never sung ever before, it wouldn't matter how much you like the song. It would not come out the way you sing it. That's for sure.
Well, thank you. But I'm lucky that I'm sitting next to a person at the piano who's aware. Let's put it in this range. It'll be warmer on your voice. Let's bring the string in this way, because when you do that and it couples that area of where you're singing, it supports even the lyric more. It becomes warmer. He understands the art of orchestration.
What would you say are the? Yeah,
it helps tell the story.
Say that again. I'm sorry, I interrupted.
It helps to tell the story. And I hear a lot of these orchestrators. They get very, 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 very busy. And somehow, the intimacy of the song and the story gets lost. Herbie knows how to be interesting without over orchestrating.
Would you say that's the greatest lesson you've learned from him? How to be interesting without over orchestrating?
Yes. Yes. And he knows, he understands the range of instruments and the importance of putting them in certain ranges for your particular voice. Very important.
That's super important. Does he go with you when you do orchestras?
He conducts all my orchestras.
He conducts.
And if the maestros insist on conducting, they have to rehearse with Herb, because he has to, explain the, people think if you just bring the scores, they're going to say, okay, we're going to count off. These things are interpretive. You can't do things like that. It just won't be right.
Well, it's the same thing you were talking about with Sinatra, is to go easy, to go slow, to cool down, whatever it would be. And if the conductor does not know this, they're gonna go maybe down a different road than that.
They'll never get the nuances of the timing right on the things too. They're very my things. If you were going to look at my scores, you'd say, Jules, what are you worried about? It's straight ahead. No. It's very deceptive. It's very deceptive. Very deceptive.
Okay.
And then if you heard me on it, you'd know what I'm talking about.
Take a step further. When you say it's very deceptive, give us an example of what's deceptive.
The nuance and the timing in the pieces. It's not always what it appears to be.
Is it? I'm always
storytelling. It's part of it.
I'm always fascinated by singers who are able to lay back a long way. And I assume that you're pretty good at it, at laying
Yeah.
back a long way.
Yeah, but you don't want to lose the pocket either. You know what I mean?
Sure.
You have to know how to do that. Don't try this at home, kids.
How much of that is instinct and how much of that is rehearsal?
It's all instinctive.
It's all instinct.
Yes. And the rehearsal part of it is the way Herbie and I lock in, so he knows what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
So that when he rehearses, nothing becomes a mess.
Well, it's back to your example about Fred Astaire, which I just adore. And I've used him as an example on many, many things, especially with students. I'll say to a student, watch Fred Astaire dance. It looks like it's effortless, but it only took 1,000 hours in the studio.
Gene Kelly was like that too.
Sure. Did you work
He
with
did
Gene?
a lot of acrobatic stuff, dangerous stuff, the jumps and all of those things. You know that one moment when he jumps up at singing in the rain, and he jumps up on the pole?
Yes.
And he holds himself out on almost a 90-degree angle?
Yes.
Trust me, that was a lot of work.
A lot. Of course, it's a lot of work, but they make
on
it
a wet set, and
they make it look effortless, like they're not even trying, and yet it's tremendous amounts of musculature and practice and rehearsal. And
of course, you know.
I love that. So I've been talking for an hour with the divine Julie Budd, and it's just so spectacular to listen to you tell stories. I'm just wondering, in all of your many, many experiences, can you share with us something that's really quirky, weird, offbeat, strange, or just plain funny that's happened to you out on the road all these years?
Which night?
Well, pick two.
Pick a night. Always happening. Pick a night. The show ain't long enough. I do remember that when I was a kid, I was working in Lake Tahoe at a place called Harrah's, and I knew Mr. Harrah, and I knew when he married Bobby Gentry, which was even stranger. And yeah, that's how long I go back. And I was working at his hotel. And why was I working at his hotel? I was 14, 15 years old, and I was allowed to work in Nevada because they didn't have child labor laws.
Mm-hmm.
So there I was working at his hotel. And there was some union law that once the show started, certain union guys could not go back out on the stage. They could do things from the perimeter, but they couldn't actually, some crazy Meshuggah law. I don't know. Don't ask me. And there was a dance team on before me, and they had a stage that was flat, and they had to dance on wood naturally. They couldn't have, see, our stage was wooden top, but it had a cement bottom, and dancers, you can't do that to them. So they had a wooden riser on top of that laid flat.
Sure.
And they were a great dance team. And
it had a little give to it.
Night after, we did 2 shows a night, 7 days a week. Sometimes we did 3 on the weekend. So everybody had to watch their instrument. I had to watch my voice. They had to watch their knees.
Sure.
You know?
Sure.
And they had to dance on a proper surface. And when they finished, the board, like a book, closed and slid off. And then some guy from the floor put the mic on the stage, and they rigged for my performance.
Right.
One night, they're dancing. They closed the thing like a book, and it takes my mic. And the guy isn't going out on stage because he's afraid the union guy is there and he's going to like never be able to feed his family again or something. So they go, ladies and gentlemen, Julie Budd. And Bill Harrah was a stickler on time. The minute they said your name, you had to hit the stage. That show had to go at a certain time. He was nuts. And I remember going out on stage left, and I walk off the stage and I wave to the audience like the Queen of England. And I leave the stage. I had the wherewithal at 14 and a half years old to pick up a mic from the wings.
Oh, wow.
I remember they told me in rehearsal there was going to be a spare in the wings. And I picked it up and I brought it out myself. You know, other people, they would like stand there and say, would somebody please bring a mic to me? And then like nobody would come, you know. And I just decided, you know what? I'm just going to handle things myself.
Well, would you have sung without the mic?
No, because I had 30 guys or 20 guys behind me, and I was in a house that seated 1,750 people.
So nobody'd hear you.
Even if they did, I wouldn't have anything in my throat for the next night.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Who does that? So I just went like, be right back. I'm not going anywhere. And I went into the wings. I searched around for the spare. I grabbed the spare. I made sure it was plugged on the bottom and it was on the on switch. And I went out and did my homework. I did my job. And it was like from a crazy, I was one time with a drunk sound and light man who fell from a scaffold, boom, right behind me. I was in Detroit, and this guy, I was in Cobo Hall, one of the hugest, it's like huge. And the guy, drunk as a skunk, and he fell off a scaffold, boom, and he went down.
In the middle of your show?
He got up in the middle of my show, and he got up. I thought he was dead. I turned to Herbie. I almost had a heart attack. The guy gets up, and he goes, I guess I shouldn't have drunk so much. And he walks up, and he walks off. And I looked at the people, and I said, live entertainment. They all stood up and applauded for me because I didn't fall apart.
You could have said, it's spectacular, isn't it?
I know. Following that whole crazy thing, I sat down with Herbie at the piano, and I said, hey, it's live entertainment. What can I tell you? These things happen. Let's hope the microphone works. And I'm still in my spotlight.
Have you ever had the mic go out anywhere else where it just drops out?
The mic went out all the time. Mics go out every day. That's why God invented spares. I always have one in the wings, or I always have one in the piano. I put them all over the place. It's like I have microphone stashes all over my stage because I have this thing. If it could go wrong, it will.
Well, that's Murphy's Law.
Of course.
Well, that's fantastic. I mean,
I've had police come in the middle of shows. Don't ask.
Police in the middle of the show?
Yeah, somebody's rowdy in the audience. In the old days, I used to work all kinds of clubs as a kid. And somebody would invariably do something ridiculous, and they'd call security. And in the middle of the show, you'd see somebody get picked up and taken out.
I assume that doesn't happen that much anymore for you.
No, I'm working performing arts centers. Now I'm a decent artist. What can I say? But when you're a kid, you'll work anywhere.
Of course.
Because you just want to work.
Right.
And getting through crazy things actually teaches you how to take care of yourself out there.
Well, no question. That gives you wisdom and experience, and you can handle all that stuff.
You don't fall apart. Believe me, if you don't fall apart from a guy falling down on a scaffold, you're not falling apart at all.
No, you're what they call good to go. You're ready you're ready for anything. All right. So last question for the day today, Julie. You've already given us tons of great things to think about and advice, but can you lend a piece of advice or a tip for someone who may be just starting out in today's business, or maybe they're in a little bit and trying to get to the next level?
I really can't.
You can't.
I don't give advice to anybody because I probably don't know more about anything than anybody else. They're going to instinctively understand what is going on once they're in it. And the thing is about this business, or maybe any business, is if you don't eat, live, and breathe it, you're going to have to leave it. There is so much in this business that makes you sacrifice. You're not going to be able to sometimes do something with your family. You're not going to be able to go somewhere because you can't talk in a restaurant over noise. Even in relationships, you better be with people who are understanding. It's a difficult business. And it requires so much physically from you, not just mentally, and you're not always going to be home. And if you are not understanding of the fact that it is going to be difficult, you can't do this. You have to go in understanding that and knowing it. That is so much of what happens in this business. That if you don't set yourself up to be strong, you're going to crumble.
I've told students for as long as I can remember that if you don't have a burning desire to do the business, it might not be for you, because it's going to push you around quite a bit. And it's not for the weak of stomach or the faint of heart. It really requires stamina and
it impacts your personal life a lot.
sure, absolutely.
And if you don't have the right partner who's really a cheerleader for you, it's going to be a very rough life. It's going to be rough. You're going to always be balancing the two, and it's going to be hard.
Well, for having no advice, I would say that's exceptional advice.
And you must train. Training is everything.
Without training, as you say, it will start to go away on you. You have to keep.
And I'll tell you too, by my constantly working as a kid, that was training in itself. I was learning on my feet.
No doubt. No doubt. Well, you were just doing it. I mean, you didn't go to school at 12 to be a singer, but you understood it by doing it.
And then, just the mechanism of getting up there and going out and learning how to handle audiences and orchestras and what happens when they screw up and you have to keep going and you have to find that place to enter back in the arrangement. And it's just, there's so much to learn. And we're all still learning.
You're still absorbing things, aren't you?
Every day of my life.
Well,
every day of my life.
That in and of itself is a lesson that you're never going to arrive. You're always going to be on that journey. And I think that it's super important that you just keep absorbing what's coming at you.
You can't ever arrive, because then you're done.
Yeah, I agree.
Then you're done. What good is it?
Well, Julie Budd, on that note, this has just been one of my favorite hours ever on StoryBeat, and I cannot thank you enough for spending some time with me today.
So nice to have me on.
It is nice to have you on. It's a very deep honor, believe me, because I've been a fan of yours for a really long time. So,
oh, Steve, thank you.
I appreciate it.
Well, we're new friends now. After COVID, come to New York, and we'll go have dinner somewhere.
Oh, you're on. That's a for sure.
You, me, and Herbie. Oh, you'll love Herbie.
Oh, I can't wait. Believe me. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
And so we've come to the end of today's StoryBeat. If you like this podcast, please take a moment to give us a rating or review on whatever app or platform you're listening to. Your support helps us bring more great StoryBeat episodes to you. Until next time, I'm Steve Cuden, and may all your stories be unforgettable.